Hello? Hello? Hello, Boone. I cannot hear you.
Hi, Weiwu.
Yeah, now I can hear you. Okay. James Brown says that he will be half an hour late, and Tor is in holiday.
He's here.
Oh, okay, good. I thought Tor is in holiday.
Just joined.
Tor is here.
No, that's next week. Next week, I'm here.
Oh, okay. I just sent a message to your colleague saying that he's not required.
Okay. I'm talking with him later, so I'll let him know.
I just wrote a message to him that he's not required to show them in the meeting. Not that.
All right. Okay, great.
So just quickly, this is what I proposed to have. Wait a moment. Let me try to share my screen. No, not starting the video. Sharing the screen. Yeah, maybe the browser. Yeah. Okay, so this meeting is about JavaScript API to provide to the to the developers. So my hope is that a TokenScript developer, yeah, he might spend some, if he needs to create data module, he might spend some time to do that. But when he uses JavaScript to access it, I hope the process is is straightforward, that he does not have to assemble the data assemble a attestation, for example, according to the data module and hope it validates. That should not happen. On the other hand, it should be the API should be designed to prevent the possibility of creating a attestation or any way of using that object that is not valid. So this is my current thinking. So if you observe the example by here, so here is the example where how to construct a ASN.1 object instance of it. The way to do that is to create a new array and assign all the value and push it into the sequence, and then you get the BER encoding. So this is this piece of JavaScript will not do for those who want to write TokenScript. You have to really know what you are doing to write this JavaScript correct. So there is an intermediary layer. Even this is a simpler version, a second sequence, where they simply use a structure like creating a new integer of value 1 and other stuff like yeah, by calling a sequence instead of filling the sequence directly, you call it with a structure like this. This is better than the previous one, but it still doesn't take advantage that every field in the ASN1 is already named. For example, here this guy put into a sequence first integer of value 1, and we don't know what that integer means, despite that there is already there is already a schema for that. And you can see actually you are able to validate Gins schema, but you are not able to construct object using the knowledge of the schema. So this is not, if we do make something like this, people will not use TokenScript. So the right way to do that is, for example, like if you have a ticket, you can simply do this. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, so you should be able to simply do this. Or a ticket object is already created for you. You just need to fill in the fields. So what is the most imaginable? Sorry, in your JavaScript experience, what is the easiest way to fill a form? By filling the form, I mean like data structure is already known, that you know like how many fields are there and what are the requirements of these fields, which one contains a structure, which one is just a plain simple value, and then you just need the goal of JavaScript is just fill in the blank. What would be the simplest way to do that? I don't have an answer, but I assigned this task to Barrett, who I hoped gave me a result before this meeting, but he hasn't. But he's very interested in working on this topic and very engaged. So I was kind of waiting for him to produce the simplest understandable API if we already know what's in the data. So Boone, do you have any comment on that? You are the most JavaScript experienced person.
Isn't that James? Anyway, just one comment. JavaScript supports getter and setters.
Does it?
Yes, it does.
Okay, nice. No, then probably.
Well, we'll need to verify that it works in the environments we want to support. But because as you know, JavaScript, there are several versions, and not all the environments support the same version. But
yeah, sometimes it might get complicated. For example, if you have an order that is if you have an order, okay, in that order you have a choice of either providing the address, which makes the order delivered, or you can provide a shop ID, which arranges the order to be picked up in a certain shop. In that case, if you set the address, you cannot set the shop ID. So a situation like this happens in a few ways. So the other might be like you might have a structure, and third might be like you are either able to provide a value or provide an array of values, and these are all known by the schema. But how to create the API for that is the problem I left to this Indian guy to solve. And if you have any input, we should open this discussion to him. But this is just my intention at the moment, and I have not his work to discuss with us.
Sounds good. Let's see what he or she is. A he or she?
It's a him. We had
let's see.
So I know it's a him.
Okay, yeah. Let's see what he comes up with. But hopefully something that involves getter and setters.
Yes, I asked him to make it idiomatic. Yeah, and I give him the example like this is the ticket, and you need to create a way to fill in the ticket object. And then I asked him to make up an example where choice is involved. And he says that no problem. And he actually made an example with choice involved. So actually look like he's on the right track. So by the time he comes back to us, we can discuss this. And this will be I hope this method is applicable to both the creation of attestation and the creation of a transaction. I think they are probably very similar in the spirit. And then let's come down to the input or source of a card. So card is the most basic and the most important element in TokenScript. You have a card that you are able to do something with it or display a token. So we already know that if you have a token card, token attribute goes into the card. But if we have an activity card, or if we have a transaction card, action card that does a transaction, things get complicated. So this is example, which is what James Brown proposed in the last meeting, but we have too little time to actually write code for it. So I wrote code in the spirit of what James Brown would have written and sent it to him. And he said, yeah, this is what he meant. So I'm being his secretary, and if he's in the meeting, I will ask him if the code is correct so that he can tell everybody that he has read it. But now just look at this. This would be what it looked like. So you have a card called activity. This is activity card. It has a data source, which is an event with certain filter applied. And then there will be a JavaScript API to provide the source of that, the source of data source, as well as the token attributes to the view. And you have the view where there are JavaScript stuff. And here, I copied the previous API we wanted to do for the card variables. This is by Boone. And I propose this as the way to get data from source. When I say it does the job of line 75 to 90, I meant this. It actually doesn't actually do the equivalent thing, because 70 this thing actually assigned created the card variables like amount and true and sourced them from other places. But this one is simply creating an object called source.
If we had kept it as line 75 to line 90, what would be the equivalent JavaScript version to access the attributes?
Well, I think it's w3.token.properties, I guess. Oh, w3.card.properties, something like that.
Why should it be different because of how we define the XML? Because they are effectively the same thing.
So there are two reasons. First, when we created the attributes for the card, the variables and attributes, used the two words interchangeably. We were treating them as a variable, not as a structured data. When we source a event or a attestation, we have structured data. So we might have, for example, web3.card.source if it's kitty, then you might have web3.card.source which is a kitty .i.color. So it's a structure. The first difference is this is if you source a event, you source structured data. So if we assign them, we can, for this one, we have to do attributes one by one, because attribute is not a structured data. Module is, yeah. And if there are nested data, you cannot assign them to attributes through this way. We haven't invented syntax to do so.
But can you have nested data from an event?
You can, yes. It's ABI. And also, just to let you know, those people who make attestations back in the days, those people who make X509 certificates or cryptographic stuff, they love using nested data. I don't know why. Ethereum people less so. And that's the first reason. The second reason being that the same logic this source is borrowed from the thinking of using input. Remember that if we have a transaction, if we have an action card that can do transaction, you might have input. So one example is we have this in the XDAI bridge. So input is one token. In this case, the token data is accessible through input. So you can have more than one input. Then you cannot just map it one-to-one. For source, you can map one-to-one. There's only one source, I think. Actually, even if you have two sources, in this case, activity might have an event as a source as well as attestation, if the logic can be done through attestation. But in the end, each of these sources will create an activity card. So if you have if you define the activity card with two sources, one is event, one is attestation, and suppose the user actually have event plus attestation, then the user will have two activities. So actually, in every card, there's only one source. But the same could not be said of input and output. So if we borrow the thinking input and output, then it has to be cannot be mapped into the card variables, because input cannot be mapped into card variables.
Okay. Regarding the name, I think, yes, we can think about whether we want source or origin, but it feels like origin is a bit better because it doesn't introduce one additional word into the grammar.
Yeah. James Brown cannot be in the meeting to argue for himself. I'm okay with both.
Yes. Oh, can we go back to the JavaScript again? I don't understand. When you say that the data structure is nested, why can't we pretend that attributes can be nested and use the same JavaScript syntax?
Attribute, the way I deal with attribute is borrowed from the way NDR or the way TBS to be signed certificate data in X509, which is basically a sequence of syntax, a sequence of object ID followed by value. That was not designed with the capacity to extend into a structure in mind. We probably can do that. Then we cannot.
What I'm saying is yeah, go on.
Then we need to make the type here actually map to the type in ASN1 schema, ASNX. And we need actually
yes, and then
with that, yeah, something like that.
Right, and then to access the nested property or nested attribute within an attribute, you would still use the JavaScript dot syntax, dot notation. So it doesn't matter whether it's nested or not. My point is whether we have this line 75 to, I don't know, line 75 to line, yeah, or the next version where the attributes are implicit. It shouldn't affect how the JavaScript API for accessing them. It's the same. It should be the same API.
Well, actually, no. That's one level different, because if you unify these two, you are not able to unify source and input. It's a dilemma there.
Are you saying that you want to make both source and when input is available, source and input accessible from the API?
So you either choose to make JavaScript, and actually maybe you can make argument for this. So let's lay out the argument, okay? I'm not 100% against it or for it. So if you make source in this case go into the card variable, which means that the true XML is identical. Like this one is identical to this one. The JavaScript requires 0 change. Okay.
Okay.
If you do so, then you unify the JavaScript in this case and this case. But the JavaScript in the action card, where the input and output and potentially multiple input output will be the special case. So let me type this for you, okay? Does it make sense to you? I can type something. So we have this in mind, okay? And let me share something else. Just picture this in your head and let me share something else. Yeah. Okay, collateralize. I just made it up. Oh, I have to save it as XML file, otherwise it doesn't give me the syntax. Yeah, now it gives me the syntax highlight. Does it look correct? It doesn't like it. Okay, no, it still doesn't like it. What's wrong? Never
It's okay,
mind.
it's readable.
The highlight is, syntax highlight is wrong, but you get the idea. So right? This makes sense to you? Oh, sorry, no, wrong, sorry. Yeah. So far, so good?
This is when we support input, right?
Yeah, we kind of already
Because
do.
we don't.
Support it in a very shallow way. Yeah.
Okay. Yes.
Okay. Yeah. So you agree that in this case, input should be an array, right?
Yes, because there can be more than one.
Yeah. Yeah. Then if input work like this, but source doesn't work like this, yeah.
It can work like this.
But if you choose to use the word origin, then it actually works like this. Because origin means something different than source. I think origin means like I define the origin of what I'm doing with. Source means that I give it a property called source. You can access it. My English is not perfect, but if you do this, oh, now let me switch back to the screen. Share, stop sharing. Okay, so let's say you didn't use source, you use the word origin here. Then I would think that that's exactly what origin means, which is that its value will be filled into the card space. Because the card origin is from here. So knowing this dilemma, you would still prefer to use origin, right?
Yes, but we don't have to mention source or origin in the JavaScript API.
if we use the origins, origins is never mentioned in JavaScript API. This is the convention. If you define origins, it's not a property. In my head,
Okay.
Means like it's to tell the engine this is where you get data, not that there's a property. So yeah, so if you I would simply call that an origin, and every time when I think about source, I somehow automatically think it's a property, where like similar to the input and output. So maybe
Okay.
yeah, this is just my mental way of mental pigeonhole. Sorry, of applying that to you, applying that to what you said. Yes, that would do too. You are in favor of that, right?
Yes, because it seems more consistent with the dot notation, with parent,
Yeah.
child, grandchild. Yeah.
Mm. Mm.
I don't think whether you call it source or origin, I would think that developers will map that to explicitly defining the list of attributes. So whether we call it source or origin doesn't seem to matter when we access it.
Yeah. Okay. I'm good with that. In 4 minutes, James Brown will join this meeting, and I said to him that we will try to get the conclusion before you join, so you cannot change it anymore. So shall we say that? So shall we say we go with origins and we just map the structure into the card property space?
Sure.
Yeah. So now now he has a problem. Anyway, the next thing.
Sorry, but just one thing. Is it card dot attribute? Does it actually start with card, or is it just an
actually
just a placeholder?
Propose. So right now it's simply like right now there's no right now whether or not it's web3.card, right?
Yes.
Okay, I propose card to be top level, not under the web3.
But can it be just card alone because we have multiple cards?
Yes, but the idea is card is only not used. So okay, let me show you some code. So okay, so imagine, okay, code inside a card.
Let me try to guess what you're saying. But I was not talking about having multiple cards in a TokenScript file. I was saying, for example, in the activities tab, there is a list of cards.
Yes.
Yes, I was talking about that. This goes a bit into the implementation. What if we have a web view, just one single web view for all the cards?
Yeah, that's a problem. That's a really good problem. So,
but we can talk a bit more about that offline, I guess. But you know my point, right?
Yeah. So can we in JavaScript, can we make this switch different context?
Yes, but might be very tricky. It's one of the most tricky part of JavaScript. What is this?
Yeah, it's already a mess. We should not make it more complicated, right?
Yes. But we can talk about it later or another time. But yeah, my point is we can't just have card alone. There has to be some way to refer to one of them out of a bunch of them.
Yes, yes, and token card has this problem too. Sometimes you go to a market website, and because we don't have a enclave, we have to implement token cards within the web page, and that creates problem. Yeah, yeah. But basically, what I want to say is, in the card you have only one card. Outside the card, you might have multiple.
Right. Yes.
Yeah. So what should we do about this? I don't know. Maybe you propose something.
We can pass in an identifier.
Mhm.
We can pass it in, pass in the card instance itself, not make it globally available.
Which means you use set properties just like before, right?
Yes, you can still use card.props.attribute name, but the card is not global. It's scoped within a function, within the callback. Like how we handle token data, token attributes at the moment.
Yeah. Would it be okay for you to create minimal list, or maybe simply go there and create the proper way to do that in ERC20 or ERC71 default TokenScript, correct the view following the design you propose, so I can have a good look and understand what you mean here.
Okay.
Yes, and also we have to do something in between. We cannot put the attribute directly after a card because you sometimes have to do other things with the card, like card confirm transaction. Yeah, for example, once you have built the object, I'm just making up the example to show that the you probably need a level between. Yeah.
But that is why in line 19 you have props. Is that it?
Yeah, I'm thinking so. Yeah. Anyway, would you be happy to? I will simply say that we go with the origins, and we make input different than origins. Then we and then I create a pull request with this change in the default ERC20 and ERC721 token scripts, and ask you to change the corresponding JavaScript part according to the way you think it should, the best way it should work.
Sounds good.
Okay, okay. So what else do we have? Yeah, actually, this is the thing we have. I was originally hoping to have the Indian work to be discussed today, but he hasn't produced it. So yeah, that's all today's agenda. Maybe the rest is question and answer session. Then we can close this meeting before James Brown even can join. Yeah. Yeah, okay, that's all good for me. Yeah, and Tor, you understand what we're trying to do here is to provide a way to create transactions and attestations with minimum learning curve for JavaScript developers.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's something that I think wasn't done before, to be able to create API dynamically based on the schema defined dynamically.
Yeah, that's what's causing us so much trouble.
Yeah. So my Indian friend told me that implementation-wise, it probably should be like this. Sorry, let me switch the screen. Yeah, okay. So can you see this? So the API provided to the developer probably look like this, but inside it probably is directly translated into a more generic one. So only the ticket interface needs to be generated dynamically. But inside ticket, it's a very simple unified structure that was passed to a more elaborate library to handle.
Okay.
Yeah. So therefore, this code that creates the interface can be dynamically generated from the schema with XSLT perhaps.
All right. Okay.
Yeah.
Let's see.
Yeah. We only ask him to produce really simple stuff. Like in the end, we only implement creation of the capacity to dynamically generate the API to create email attestation. Just that.
Yeah.
And not able to handle anything. And then just to have a concept, then we will go from there.
Right. Yes, I've been working on also the MVP and the types and everything like that, and it's actually, I mean, it's pretty. I'm doing this like minimal proof of concept implementation, basically to make sure that the things are as they need to be, and it seems like basically everything can be like the data that's needed for this, besides the check itself, is really simple. And I think it all makes sense actually to embed directly into the standards, meaning that the data we need to communicate for an attestation request is basically a standard PKCS 10 certificate signing request, where I mean there's space for attributes, which basically is basically just a value identifier, and then a sequence of objects, which is basically all we need for these simple structures. The same with a standard X509 certificate for these things. Basically, as we already like talked about how to encode identity and things like that, that's like the subject info can be also encoded directly, and then the actual cryptographic stuff can also seems to also just be working by coding directly as an extension following the standard format. So this basically means that everything should work and read and verify using standard libraries. Of course, like of course they don't know the specific data, like, you know, they're not aware that that what we encode as the common name is like an Ethereum address, right? But it still seems to be workable to get around with just using the standards as they are.
So yeah, so you're talking about stuff you're adding.
Yes, yes, this one, yeah.
So let me go to the updated attestation and the data model. Yeah, there's a good description here.
Yeah.
I read 2/3 of it. Very nicely written, by the way. I wouldn't be able to write so precisely myself. And you have also mentioned how to deal with version. Nice. And basically, you are making an MVP that creates the message, pass the message, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so everything should.
So there might be some corrections because this is something from quite a while ago.
Oh, by the way, do you mind? Sorry, interruption. Do you mind if I replace common name with common name without a space in between?
Yeah, sure. That's also more correct. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, there are a lot of details I have to consume, but in general, very nice written. but I don't get the part of identity being incorporated into standard.
I mean, basically, like, I mean, we don't need to introduce, so, I mean, basically, this is just, I figured this out because I was trying to get things to work with the libraries, and basically, that like the data structure we actually need, that's different from the standard X509, is still compatible with what's allowed within extensions.
Yeah. Oh, so you mean that everything goes into the extensions, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. That's allowed. Yeah. Yeah. Nice. Of course.
I mean, that's at least it's possible. We don't have to, but at least that's what I've been trying, because this makes it much easier to
totally
try
agree.
to get something to.
Yeah. Okay. So that's the line of work you're doing. That's very nice. I will consume the other 1/3 of this document.
This document is a bit outdated. This is not one I've been working on now. This is something we worked on a while ago.
3 days ago.
Or the original, I guess. I remember I changed it a bit. I changed it a bit last week. To update some of it, but it's.
I already have a minor like a wording update. I will commit as soon as possible, so you don't have too much conflict.
All right.
To this README file.
Yeah.
Then the other branch you have been working on is sorry. Is this one, right?
Yes.
So this one is about the testation framework in general, and this one is about identifier testation, which is used in this experiment.
Yeah.
VP. And you started. You haven't committed anything on top of this. Yes, you did. You?
I have, but it's I have it locally. I haven't pushed it.
Okay. Yeah. Okay.
Because it's not done enough to push. That's why.
This would it be great to have a look at that? In this branch, we can work together. You and me can work on this branch together, because this is a attestation TokenScript as well as a sample minimum implementation. Yeah. So if you do that in that way, I can look at the code and figure out what you mean exactly.
Yeah. All right.
Okay. All good. I hope you like the meeting like this. Yeah, it's about time.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Have a nice evening.
Thanks.
Yes. Thank you. Bye.
Bye.